We're going to turn now to our generation to generation fireside chat. Adult and youth partnerships are essential to creating more inclusive social and economic opportunity for young people. And at the heart of that is the ability to sit down together and exchange ideas. I therefore want to thank our summit's partner, IREX, for shaping this fireside chat, along with Sarita Gupta at the Ford Foundation and Asher Adesina Adeni with Ripple Impact Limited in Nigeria. Asher is also a young leader. With that, Sarita and Asher, welcome to the GYO Summit, and over to you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Sarah. This is really terrific to be here with all of you. I'm sorry, I'm just trying to figure out if my video is going to work or not, but I'll just roll with this. So I want to thank you, Sarah, and thank IREX for inviting me to take part in the program this year. I'm really excited to be joining you all for this critical conversation about youth employment opportunities, and specifically to be in conversation with Asher this morning to explore some key questions related to youth employment programs. As you heard from the introductions, and you may have read about us, Asher founded and currently serves as the CEO of Ripple Impact Limited, a human resources tech firm spearheading innovative employment solutions in Nigeria. Recently, Asher earned a note of credence from the Nigerian state government for his consulting performance on a 4-year plan to create thousands of jobs in Nigeria. So with that being a bit of a background of Asher, I'm going to dive into the conversation and would love to start by asking you, Asher, in discussions about youth employment programs around the world, there are often questions about why youth employment programs are not going to scale. Why do you think youth employment programs are not going to scale? And what have you learned through your work in Nigeria about the barriers and the opportunities to reach the more marginalized and vulnerable youth? And I'll just add, given the voices we just heard on that very powerful video, please feel free to talk about how COVID has impacted barriers and opportunities.
Hi, everyone. It's so good to be here. Thanks for the opportunity to share and learn from everyone. So I'm going to break that question into two and talk about our experience here. The first one is why youth employment programs don't scale, why the chances are low. And I think one of the reasons learning from here in Nigeria is that there is really no homogeneous policy that define, the capacity for various organizations to carry out programs. So you find out that when organizations carry out youth employment programs, some do it well and some don't. So it's very important that there is a homogeneous policy about the requirements and the capacity for organizations to carry out sustainable and impactful youth employment programs all around the country. I think another reasons why youth employment programs don't scale is because some of these things, some of the programs doesn't treat or solve the root cause of poverty and illiteracy. And after that is unemployment. So in our climb, in our country, in Nigeria, for instance, poverty is both a cause of unemployment and a consequence of it. So you find out that when youth most important daily need is what to eat and how to eat, then unemployment or getting a job becomes secondary. So it becomes a vicious circle. So when somebody gets trained and gets this starter pack, to start a particular trade or is equipped with a skill, but if that environment is really not okay, the economic factors are still there, and this person is not able to thrive in the market, then you find out that he or she goes back to where he was, and then that skill. I think also for vulnerable youth, more programs that trains youth and hires them is very important. So in Nigeria, and I'll go straight to what our experience is here in Nigeria. So what we've discovered is that for you to scale more and for your program to be sustainable, you have to train to hire. You know, a lot of times, a lot of programs train youth, equip you to set up their businesses, but entrepreneurship is hard. You know, starting your business, sustaining your business is hard, and it's harder in a country like ours. So it's important that what we've done, not talking about experiences, we've spoken to a number of businesses, we've created incentives for businesses so that they can train to hire. So we've opened bigger locations, bigger offices at a very good rate, you know, giving incentive for training youth so that these companies can train and hire these trainees for about 6 months so that when they've worked and then they've saved from their salaries for 6 months, then they can begin the process of starting their own business or getting a good job because now they have an experience. Because most of the employers request for experience all the time, but these folks don't have experience. These youth don't have experience, and they wonder, where do I get this, you know, this experience from? So it's very important that we begin to encourage businesses to train to hire. So we provide space, starter packs, and training fees. In return, the businesses are to train, you know, a particular number of participants on skills and then hire them. I think the second part of the question is how we reach marginalized and vulnerable youth. And we explore social media, so we're very active on WhatsApp and Facebook. And in Nigeria, we have over 78% internet penetration rate. So you'll be surprised that even when you go to remote areas, people are with their phones, or people in a particular locality have access to a phone that they use. So the information goes to that phone, you know, and it's even in our experience, it's very easy, you know, for us to even reach out to people in remote areas because the information there is very, very homogeneous and very organized because it comes straight from the leader of the community to the families and to youth in that area. So we usually, you know, focus on, you know, community communication with at the very low level. So those are the things that we explore. All programs succeed because, you know, we infuse our own professional savvy with the community buy-in. So there is nothing we really, all the projects that we've done, and I mean, in the last 4 years, we've created over 170,000 jobs in Edo State. And it's just been a very good story to tell because we have hundreds of projects across the state, hundreds of projects, but we always go dive into stakeholders meetings. So there's always a stakeholders meeting before we carry out each of those projects because we need the buy-in of the community, and that's how we communicate effectively. So we don't just say, oh, we have this fantastic idea, we have this training coming up, or we have this opportunity for the youth. No, we go in there, we listen to them and ask them, you know, what their challenges have been, and then, you know, we come up with the solution for those communities. I hope that helps.
Absolutely, Asher, and congratulations. It's so inspiring and important to hear. You know, 70,000 jobs is not something to, you know, sneeze at. It's a huge accomplishment, and just want to really appreciate the work that you've done. And what I've heard in your answer is both the importance of validators, the importance of partnerships, the importance of the buy-in from the community. And you spoke a little bit about some of the ways you've incentivized businesses and other stakeholders to partner with you. I wonder if you can share a little bit about what you think it takes to have an impactful multi-stakeholder approach to addressing issues related to youth employment. Sometimes I think we can be in our own way. So how do we get out of our own way in order to really support the kind of partnerships that you're talking about?
Okay, I think that the first thing is data. By the way, in the last 4 years, we create 170,000, not 70,000. So over 170,000 Yeah. So I think the most important thing we've discovered that stakeholders, especially businesses, are very key on is data. So the first thing we did when we started the project was to do a skill mapping of the entire state. So we had enumerators that went from one local government to another to enumerate the youth that are unemployed or underemployed. So we have those data, and so when businesses come, stakeholders, the community guys, the locals, when they come together, we already know what exactly the skill that they need, in that community. So we know the particular skill they need in that community, and it's very, very important. We also have several incentives that we give. For instance, like I mentioned, for a lot of our programs, we undertake the training phase, but we also support businesses, especially businesses out of Edo State, because Edo State is not like the economic hub of Nigeria. Edo State is like maybe it is at the center of the country, almost at the center of the country, but it's like the economic hub of the South South. So it's very important that we also attract big businesses from outside the state. So what we did with the support of the state government was to create incentive for location. So sometimes we give out locations that are existing, or we renovate locations, buildings that are existing to incentivize businesses to come and set up. A lot of times they pay the rent for those facilities, but we give out data. So the data is very important for them. So we already know, the skill available in the state. We also know the raw materials or resources that they need in the state. I will provide a lot of these things for them. Also, so let me break it down a little bit. So for the programs that we've had, for instance, we have program that is dedicated to the ICT, and future work. And so at that particular facility, the incentive is collaboration with big businesses like Facebook, like LinkedIn, who have their franchise offices at those locations. We have Uber there, we have Bolt there. So we have big businesses there that enables other small businesses, to achieve whatever they want to achieve. We have strategic partnership with internet providers. Edo State, for instance, is one of the few states in Nigeria that have broadband connection across the state. So the internet connection is very fast, and is especially very fast in these particular locations. Also, some of the incentives we give, for instance, when you look at some like agricultural hubs, media and entertainment, or production hub, is that we've brought people we call collators together that can buy, like off-takers, that takes off, that buys the produce, in large chunk. So those are the things that we've done. So we've created opportunities for business such that you can produce in the States, but really you don't need to look for people that will buy. We would also get people that will buy your products, and because it's a state government, we also use our reach to reach out to people, especially for our young people that we train all the time on ICT, on agriculture. We use our network to get buyers, or people that will buy, their service or their product. So those are the things that we do, to just, break down because the number one barrier that we know is who will pay for my product or service. So we have to be very convincing that somebody is ready to pay for your product or service.
That's really incredible. And thank you for correcting me on the number of jobs that you helped create. And it's just incredible to hear about the model and what you have been practicing and learning in this context. Would you, just as I know you want to ask me some questions, so I want us to transition as well, but I'm wondering if you have any final thoughts on just how you see COVID impacting either some of these opportunities or barriers right now.
I mean, it has been a mix of good and challenging. So the good has been when COVID started and there was a lockdown for a lot of our production and manufacturing and agriculture, they were able to expand their reach in the States. So they were able to get more producers, they were able to get more buyers rather in the States, within the States. So because suppliers couldn't come from outside the States to supply their goods, so they were able to, expand their tentacles. But the downside of COVID-19 is with employees. When it started, I mean, Nigeria has a very loose labor law, so in Nigeria, anybody can really fire and hire at any time with whatever reason. So there was a lot of, I mean, the unemployment rates went up to around 40%. Contract staff, temporary staff were all, fired. So it was really a tough time, and that increased the insecurity in the country as a whole at that time, because people were desperate, to find money just to eat. So it was really a tough time. But thankfully, we didn't really shut down for a long time. So when people understood that this was going to be, a long haul, then, we just started living our lives and coping with COVID. Yeah.
That's great. Thanks, Asher. So tell me, what do you want to know from me in relationship to this conversation?
Yeah, I think number one thing is, having looked at your profile, I think the first thing is understanding what's your perspective about the future of work or the future of workers, relating with, temporary staff, contract staff, temporary hires. How does it impact, how does this future of work impact on them? Especially in Nigeria, the poverty rate is over 40%. So I just want to understand, what is the perspective of Ford Foundation to a country like Nigeria, looking at marginalized and vulnerable youths too.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to share a little bit about the Future of Workers program at the Ford Foundation. Our work is about building a future in which working people will experience basic economic security, dignity on the job, and greater opportunity for themselves and the next generation. We believe the future is fundamentally about people. Therefore, we focus on the future of workers and how we can collectively develop a path to shared prosperity and economic security for all workers. So our work focuses on modernizing the social contract and labor policies to meet this moment we're in, to reimagine the flow of capital and markets, and to foster more responsible innovation and technology. And as a philanthropy, we see ourselves as critical partners to workers and their movement for equity, to governments, and also to businesses that want to step up and be part of building a more equitable future together. It's important to say that we intentionally named our program the Future of Workers and not just Future of Work, because we really believe that it's the future for working people that is in question, not only the changing nature of work and the work arrangements themselves. And so how this applies to Africa in particular is we're focused on informal workers as a result of the fact that more than 60% of working people in the world earn their livelihoods in the informal economy. And in Africa, as you, I'm sure, well know, over 85%, the vast majority of employment is informal. And young workers between the ages of 15 and 24 are informally employed at a rate of 94%. So our theory of change is to support workers to build power and shape the nature of work. And that means really shaping what is the future of jobs going to look like. And if you are in short-term gig work, as people will describe, What are the types of social protections that you need in order to live with dignity and work with dignity? So we look at all of those questions in the policy, the capital strategies, and the technology arena. We're already supporting the work of informal worker organizations, including StreetNet International, HomeNet, and International Domestic Workers Federation, all of which have presences across the African continent and are working at the local, national, regional, and global level to raise the voice, validity, and visibility of informal workers. And we're also supporting the linkages between formal and informal worker organizations and institutions. And finally, we're doing some exploratory work around capital flow. We want to see workers centered in capital flow and investment projects. We think that economic actors must take into consideration outcomes such as employment generation, labor standards, and social protections, in addition to the climate and the environmental impact and safe and healthy workplaces free from gender-based violence and harassment. So that's how we think about this question of the future of workers.
All right, I think that's clear. And I wanted to ask something about how you work with governments, but you answered that in your reply. I think the other question I want to ask is, thinking about the US, Europe, and Africa and Nigeria, what are the things that you think that for instance, in US, Europe, unemployment rate is under 5%. What are the lessons that you think that we can adopt here as CSOs or as government agencies that will help us break the barrier of the unemployment situation in Africa? So how can we also partner with you to increase donor investments in that respect?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. So I'll just say, as a philanthropy that is committed to increasing the voice and agency of workers themselves, and in this case, young workers themselves, in shaping policies and economic models that are affecting their lives, first and foremost, it's important to ensure that that you are, in fact, involving workers to take part in developing a vision and organizing for that vision. Some of the types of areas that we are exploring where I think partnership with CSOs and governments will be really interesting is like in a policy context, we're talking right now about looking at the public dialogue that's happening around formalizing the informal sectors, for example, but how to do that in a way that does not label informality as a problem, but rather that workers are valuable and essential, and that formalization could be good if it provides protections and standards in the way that I was talking about. So, that's a body of exploration, and our ability to learn from governments and CSOs about where and how they are thinking about that would be tremendously helpful. Or capital strategies work is another area where we want to better understand how investment can prioritize employment. How can we lift up standards and protections in addition to promoting employment generation and investment right now? And then finally, how can we want to understand more about how co-ops and self-employment or self-employed structures can be good sources of employment generation. So for us, those are some of the areas where we're looking and really hungry to learn. And finally, I just want to lift up the point you raised that as a donor, we operate in a country that has lower unemployment rates. And so I think it's really important for us to keep creating opportunities for donors like us to learn from your work, to learn about the realities of large unemployment, about having large informal sectors of work, and what is working and what is not working, and what is needed. And how can we be better partners? I know, Asher, in talking with you prior to this, you have experiences in which sometimes the mechanisms that donors use can prevent partnerships, especially with those of you who are actually advancing structural change. And so, I think that kind of feedback loop is really important for us to get past the barriers and really begin to invest and partner on some real solutions moving forward.
Wow, fantastic. I think you answered all the questions. Thank you.
Absolutely, my pleasure. It was wonderful to talk to you as well. And I think I'm now turning it back over to Sarah.
All right. Thank you so much again, Sarita and Asher, for a great conversation. We've heard a lot about the importance and also the complexity of multi-stakeholder partnerships and how these are done, how they're incentivized, and how they're sustained in the long run. I really appreciate your comments. And I think in the midst of a global crisis like the one we're in now, this kind of communication and cooperation is going to be so essential. But even long before the pandemic, around the world, we've seen young people mobilizing on critical policy issues like environmental protection, economic opportunity, security, and human rights. And yet, too often, youth are simply not included at the decision making tables or taken seriously when global leaders convene to discuss solutions for these global challenges. And I think that's why these kinds of conversations between generations is so important, between organizations like the Ford Foundation that can help inform policy and mobilize resources for impact, and with young people like you, Asher, who are working on the ground, who know your context the best. This is really critical. So I'm grateful to you both, and I'm grateful to IREX again for organizing this conversation this morning.